you. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the series Fallen, no other than Miss Anne Schlea. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Anne. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Hello, I am so glad to be here. I am an author of the series The Fallen and Retribution. I am from Northwest Ohio, but I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I love to write and I'm excited to share my books with
Definitely. So, Miss Ansley, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. What was the original inspiration behind the Fallen series?
you. The original inspiration was really I like writing about sort of Judeo-Christian mythology and religion in fiction. And so I came up with this idea of fallen angels that were here to put the demons back into Pandora's box, and that's where it came from.
How would you describe the central themes that run throughout the series?
So the Fallen itself, right now anyway, is a standalone book, and it's about finding out who you are and what matters to you. Off of the Fallen is a trilogy called Orphan of the Fallen, of which there's two, and the third book will come out this year. And that is a coming of age story. It's about the daughter of the main character in the Fallen and what she's doing to determine where she wants to take her life and what she wants to do with herself. So it's really a coming of age story as far as the trilogy goes.
Interesting indeed. Can you introduce us the main character or characters and what makes their journey unique?
So Marissa is the main character, and she was raised in the world of humans, and that's unusual for her culture. Her culture, for the most part, and this is Orphan of the Fallen right now that I'm talking about. So Marissa was raised in among humans, and she comes into her life as a fallen when she's about 15. So she hasn't experienced growing up with everyone else like her. She is learning as she goes, and she has two very good friends. Nick is one of them, and there's a little bit of romantic attraction between her and Nick, but it's more on Nick's side than hers. And then she meets another teenager named Tevin, and Tevin is strong and he's confident and he's sure of himself, and she wants all of those things for herself. So she becomes very good friends with Tevin, which makes Nick very unhappy. And that is the basis for the story.
So, Miss Anne, what challenges did you face when creating the world of the Fallen?
First, there was the mythology behind it. I wanted to make it as realistic as possible, so I did a lot of research into different types of demonology and what made sense for that time and that place, and then I had to decide how I wanted to proceed. Like, did I want to look at all of the demons of the world from all of the different cultures, or did I want to look at one specific culture? Research is really important to me in all of my books, whether it's the Fallen series that we're talking about or it's the Retribution series that I also have written. So, doing that research and making sure it was historically accurate and as mythologically accurate as possible was very, very important to me.
Truly, very, very important. How do you develop the methodology or lore that plays a role in the series?
So, the mythology is the basis for everything because these are mythological creatures. They are in the fallen, they're angels that made the choice to come to Earth. It was a choice that was given to them. So they came to Earth to track down these demons from Pandora's box. And I realize immediately I'm taking something out of Greek mythology, which is Pandora's box, and I'm crossing it with something from Judeo Christian background, which is angels. But the concept was the Greeks opened Pandora's box and oops, they couldn't put the demons back. So they went to all of the gods of the world and said, how can we fix this? And that's how the god of the Israelites at the time said, let me send some of my angels and see what they could do. And they've been working on this process ever since. And that writing that into the characters, I needed to do a lot of research before I even wrote the first word.
Sounds interesting, Miss Anne. I hope it will become a series on Netflix or whatever streaming platform. Hoping for your success. So, how do you balance action, romance, and deeper emotional struggles throughout the story?
My books are all very character driven. So the actions of the main character are the main focus of the book. So through these books, Marissa and her mom in the book before it, it's really a focus of what she's feeling and what she's experiencing. And she's 15, so she doesn't really get romance quite yet. She thinks she does, but she doesn't really. And she's really focused on what she wants to be. It's for her, deciding her future is a huge problem because her mom is a very successful military commander, and so she wants to do that, but at the same time she knows her mom wants her to be safe. So it's learning to balance those things between safety and doing what she wants to do in life, that that's a struggle for her. So it's more about that struggle than anything else. The romance comes in, it grows more in the second book and even more in the third book as she grows up and she becomes more of an adult and she starts to think about, well, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Do I want to be alone, or do I want to have somebody with me? And that's where romance comes in.
Miss Anne, what was the hardest scene to write across the entire series?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer without giving away something from the second book. um,
Spoilers.
so it's very hard. Actually, actually no. The hardest scene for me was my previous series, Retribution, was an open ended series. It doesn't really end. It's still open, so I can go back and write more books in the series. At the end of the Orphan of the Fallen trilogy, which is Soldier of the Fallen, that'll be coming out later this year, it was a hard end. And that was really hard for me to literally write the words the end, because I knew I was done with those characters and there wasn't going to be one more book and there wasn't going to be one more chapter and there wasn't going to be any more to their story. Writing the end was the hardest thing I have ever done.
Totally agree to you. Saying goodbye is hard to do. And were there any characters inspired by real people or personal experiences?
Not in this book. In the Fallen series, it was all in my head. In the Retribution series, there were a couple of characters from my college years that were people I would have liked to have continued on life with that I didn't. Um, they were, and they're still with me. They're still part of the series. I've not killed them off or anything like that. They're still there. But as far as the Fallen goes, it was all entirely in my head, and people. For me, my writing style is very much the characters speak to me. I don't know how else to explain that. It sounds a little schizophrenic, but I will wake up in the morning and I will have a very clear idea of what's happening next. And it's like the characters are talking to me. So the characters are very real to me, even though they're not real people.
Certainly, real people, very real characters. So, Miss Anne, what will be your short term and long term goals in writing?
My short term goals right now is to finish. I started a new trilogy about the Fae. It's yet unnamed, and I've got about 4,000 words before the end of the first book, and then I can get it to my editor and they can look at it. So that is my short term goal. My long term goal, I think, is really just to continue to tell the stories that are brought to me to the people who want to read them. And I have fans in a couple of different states that have little fan clubs, and it's fantastic, and I appreciate them, and they're wonderful. I want to continue bringing them books that they're interested in. And when I get to the point that I run out of ideas, then I guess I'll retire, but I don't see retirement coming anytime soon.
Not sooner or later. So, Miss Anne, what advice would you give new readers just starting to read The Fallen?
Let the fantasy take you away. I know it's hard to imagine being in a world where there are angels walking around killing demons, but just let yourself in, enjoy the fantasy and realize that these characters are really very human on the inside. When you take the moment to really get to know them and look beyond their superpowers, they're just like us. And what I'm really writing is fairy tales for grown-ups, fairy tales for young adults that give you a moral to the story. And the moral to the story of the Orphan of the Fallen is that you can be whatever you want to be. You just have to put your mind to it.
Yes, indeed. Who knows? The Fallen will be the next Game of Thrones. So,
That's right.
what makes Fallen different from other fantasy or supernatural series out there?
I think the characters are more human. They don't have a lot of big superpowers. They're a little bit faster than the average human. They're a little bit more skilled than the average human, but they have all of the same hopes and dreams that we have. They're an entire culture, they're an entire society. And I think when you read it, it's not, there's no, I'm trying to think of the right word. There's, it, they could be you. Like that could be you any day of the week. And that's what I think makes this book special is you can really relate to the characters.
So, do you have a favorite quote or moment from the series that you feel captures its spirit?
Yes. My favorite moment is in the book The Fallen, which is really, like I said, a prequel. And they're about to go out and start searching for these demons. And they have a festival, and they have this festival, and all the people from their community participate in this festival, and it's just a very real moment. The teenage girl catches her mom kissing her soon to be stepfather in public, and she's mortified. And it's a lot of just things you would see in a normal everyday community that really speaks to me as far as it feels like today anywhere in a festival anywhere in the country.
How much planning and outlining did you do before starting the first book?
Okay, so here's where people think I'm crazy as an author. I don't outline. I I do no outlining. The stories come to me. Most of the books that I wrote early in my career, all of the Retribution except for the last one and the first two Fallen books, I wrote kind of like a patchwork quilt where I would write scenes and chapters and then I would piece them together later. So I didn't write in chronological order. Something happened with me in my brain. I had a serious illness a couple of years ago, and everything I've written since that illness is written in chronological order. Like I said, I don't outline it ahead of time. I just know when I start working on the book where I'm starting and where I'm ending.
How do you approach character growth and evolution over the series or the several books, Miss Anne?
When I think about the characters, like in particular Marissa, over the course of four books that she's in, I think about she's 15, she's 16, she's 17, she's 18, she's growing up over the course of the book, and where I was, and I happen to work with teenagers, so I think about what my average 17-year-old is thinking about. And that's how I handle some of the growth as far as keeping it age appropriate for where she is. The other half of it is I know where she starts and I know where she ends up, and it's a very organic thought process for me as far as when I sit down to write how she ages appropriately to get to where she's going.
So, were there any plot twists that surprised even you while you are writing?
Oh yeah, somebody died and I wasn't prepared for that. There's a major character death in the second book, and I had no idea that was coming until I got to that part of the book and I started writing that chapter, and I was like, "Oh my god, this character has to die for the rest of this to make sense." And I realized that I think subconsciously I knew it the whole time, but until I was actually writing that chapter, I had no idea.
Totally, totally. So, how important is the idea of redemption or transformation in the series?
So the character that I'm referring to that dies um, in the second book is part of the entire third book as a ghost, and a lot of the redemption that happens is that character's redemption. Is that character being able to go back and say, I made these mistakes in life and now I want to correct them. And that character can speak to one of the other characters. I'm being very vague on purpose because I don't want to ruin anything. Um, but there is not so much for Marissa redemption, but for one of the other characters, there is very much that redemption.
So, Miss Anne, how do you keep readers engaged over the course of a multi book series?
I enjoy going to cons, to conventions. I go to Dragon Con pretty much every year, and I'm able to engage people there. I'm excited to be going to Con Carolinas in Charlotte this year, and I find when I can connect to the readers, they stay with me. So I'm very responsive on social media. If you send me an email, I will reply to it. I try to stay engaged with the readers that reach out to me.
Well, congratulations again, Miss Anne, for sharing your Fallen series to the world and
Thank
looking
you.
for more and more series to come. What emotions do you hope readers experience while reading The Fallen?
Hope. I hope they're able to see that there is hope in even the worst possible circumstances. Courage. I really want them to get some courage and read and think, wow, if this 15-year-old girl can survive this, I can survive this too. And a little bit of self empowerment.
Definitely looking for that empowerment, people. Are there hidden messages or Easter eggs in The Fallen of readers to find?
Of course, you can go to the first book and figure out what's going to happen in the last book if you're really paying attention. I don't hide it as well as I would like. My beta readers were shocked when they got to the end, but that was cool. I liked that. But there is, and in Retribution too. There's if you live in the Atlanta area, there's a lot of places and locations in Retribution series that you will recognize.
Yes, indeed. I hope the ending is not like Game of Thrones.
No, 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 no.
No, no, no. Thank you for that. So, Miss Anne, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, in its fifth season. People, fifth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letter senders all over the world. So please do listen Food 101 wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Anne, after finishing this series, what do you most hope readers will take away from the story and its characters?
I hope that they get a few hours of enjoyment. I want to take them away from the troubles of whatever their world is right now. I want them to let go of a little bit of stress, and I want them to really just enjoy Marissa's story and realize that there can be a happily ever after, even if it's not the way you thought it was going to turn out.
Miss Anne Schlea, thank you so much for sharing your series to the world, Fallen itself. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your series or your books itself?
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on Amazon. You can find all of my books on Amazon. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Ansley because if you support her, more and more and more empowering novels or series to come. So, Miss Anne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
More to come, people. See you soon.